Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you. Thank you once again for joining me for this Thursday evening, 6 o'clock, look into the Holy Book devotional. Seems like it's been a long time since we were able to get together. Um, my computers are working, I guess, as well as I can expect them, but hopefully we'll be able to get through this evening without any technical glitches. But once again, thank you for joining me, and it is really, really good to be back with you. So tonight, the title of our devotional is As We Get Older, Are We Thriving or Surviving? And I would make this comment. As we enter the 15th percentile, are we doing it with joyful anticipation, embracing the new order, or dreading the problems associated with aging? Now, last week I found myself at a 4th of July dinner held at my church. I'm on the security team, so I was observing people coming and going as I usually do, when I saw a little girl, probably no older than 5 or 6, running back and forth, doing what children usually do. And I thought to myself, what is the world going to look like when she's my age? All of a sudden, this overwhelming thought came over me that she's just beginning to experience life. And I'm nearly at the end of mine in comparison. What a sobering thought. And not only that, but the internet says, and of course I believe everything on the internet, says that at age 77, 85% of the people that are in that age group are no longer with us. For lack of a better name, we call that the 15%. Now, if that doesn't make you stop and think, I don't know what will. Now, the message this evening is primarily directed to the 15%. However, it is for anyone who has struggled with getting older. I actually started to think about that when my hair started to turn gray and fall out in my 20s, believe it or not. You will no doubt recognize some of the problems that we encounter as we get older. You know, we Christ followers look forward to the time that we are taken up to be with the Lord. But we face uncertainty when thinking about whether we're going to suffer a debilitating, painful disease and have to rely on someone else to serve as our caregivers. There's uncertainty when it comes to not knowing if we will outlive our resources and have to become dependent on the government's very meager assistance. There's uncertainty when thinking about being physically able to live in our own homes. We are sometimes hesitant to make long-range plans, being unsure if we will be here to see those plans through. Our children are a wonderful gift from God, and we are there for them when they needed guidance and help. But it comes a time when those roles are reversed, and as much as we dread it, it may we may have to rely on them. However, having been raised in a Christian home, the Bible prepares us for those things when it says, honor thy father and thy mother. But sometimes we can't help but dwell on those old Victorian images of an elderly lady or gentleman sitting idly in their rocking chair, seemingly alone and reflective, as the world and time passes them by. At this age, many of us have suffered the loss of our spouses or companions and face the possibility of having to spend the rest of our lives alone. It generates not only a feeling of physical loneliness, but emotional loneliness. If one has been associated with a church, or even if they have been an active member and contributed time and resources over the years, they may develop feelings of invisibility because of the inability of being able to continue that same level of participation. They begin to feel that they are no longer useful. The dynamics and complexion of the church naturally changes, and with the new and younger people coming in, these people don't know you or how you have dedicated your life to the church. With the feelings of being unused and unknown in a church that you dedicated your life to comes a feeling of emotional isolation. There are thoughts like, my wife or husband has gone to be with Jesus, so I no longer have company or someone who depends on me. I have to come to terms with the fact that I will be living the rest of my life alone. Now, don't get me wrong. Our faith gives us confidence that we are never really alone, but the warmth of another person is sorely missed. Then there is the thought that you don't want to burden anyone with your problems, and especially your children. One of the worst things that can happen is to become lonely in your heart. I've been ministering for many years at one of our local assisted living facilities here in Green Valley, and I've observed a kind of loneliness I can only that can only be defined as loneliness in one's heart. And sadly, at times, that loneliness evolves into a hardening of the heart and an animosity towards God who they blame for their isolation. Although we have personally seen or experienced one or more of these examples, it is my hope and prayer that these people do not represent the majority of the 15%. It's also my hope that those who have come to terms with the natural process of aging are in a, quote, once-in-a-lifetime group. Now, I can't really take credit for that title because in my research for this devotional, I relied on some work from Olivia Reed and her blog on personal well-being. A once-in-a-lifetime person is an individual who has lived a life of experiences and contributed positively to their circle of influence and profited by their own mistakes and those of others. She calls them highly valued, wise, gray-haired, and experienced individuals. Now we know by God's words in Leviticus 19:32 that it is His command that we respect and show that respect to the elderly. It says, stand up in the presence of the aged and revere your God. I am the Lord. You know that God has called a number of individuals whose youth were spent living and doing things that were so far removed from divine calling that even when Moses was called, he was incredulous when God called him to lead his people out of bondage in Egypt. Moses was 80 years old, well into his 15th percentile. But Moses served as a strategist and a general, a writer, and personal intermediary between God and his people. God called Abraham from a life of success and relative ease and told him to go to a place that he had never seen. He did this on faith, and he would become the father of many nations as a result. Now, Paul was called after a life spent persecuting Christians. Now, I can't hold a candle to these specially called servants, but I was called to ministry when I was 67 years old. Now, having said that, is it up to God to tell us when to retire? Now, rhetorical question or not, God doesn't use age as a determining one's job resume. However, no one who has ever lamented over lost youth or have felt the literal pains of old age has at one time or another experienced the negative aspects of aging that I actually shared when we began our time together this evening. But the title of this devotional is, As We Age, Are We Thriving or Just Surviving? Now, there's another positive side to aging journey that we're on, and it's founded in our faith. It is possible to enter into this new phase of life with eager anticipation and joy, embracing our new normal, if you will. Psalm 92:14 says, They shall bear fruit in old age, they shall be fresh and nourishing. Now, take our looks, for example. We're a culture of anti-aging creams and lotions that keep our skin from creping, or whatever that word is. 15-minute facelifts and chemical peels. We want to look forever young, as the Rod Stewart song says. But Proverbs seems to say that we should be proud of our looks into our old age. Chapter 20, verse 29 says this, The glory of a young man is in his strength, and the splendor of old men is in their gray hair. There's no doubt that we are a vain culture. But have we stopped to think that God is our restorer? And he does it from the inside out. Ruth 4:5 says, He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher in old age. There's also the aspect of making a positive contribution, not only for yourself, but for those around you, even in this time of our lives, while also embracing our aging process. We could even be joyful while doing it. But you say, I've paid my dues, I've contributed to a productive society, and I'm ready to sit back and watch others do it too. But there's one fallacy to this position, and that is that time will not stop, and it continues to change. Here's some suggestions on how to live longer and enjoy it more. And yes, they are biblically founded. First of all, count each day as a gift from a loving God. We never stop gaining wisdom, and we never stop learning more about God's grace and love. Aged wisdom is like fine wine for those who seek it. Staying active and sharing experiences is always a good way to keep involved. This is especially true if your church has served as your social, emotional, and spiritual home. If your health permits, there's joy in staying active and involved. One can age gracefully in the Lord. There's no X date on sanctification, nor is there any retirement age to sharing the gospel or telling someone your testimony. Sharing God's word is profitable at any age. Of course, there are many things that we can do for ourselves that can lead to enjoyment and satisfaction while embracing our senior status. And the first one, maybe, and these are just ones that I've thought of, but I know that you can think of so many more. But the one that I thought of is get engaged, start a new hobby or activity. Some of the finest artwork that I've seen comes from a life of many experiences and life lessons. And two, be a volunteer. And I know that many of you already are. Our community is unique for being known as those who volunteer their time in the community or at church. It keeps one motivated, active, and involved in the social climate of this little village called the Green Valley. It's giving back, and you would not believe how many 15 percenters who thrive in this work. And number three, be there for your family. Sometimes there's a natural period of withdrawal as our families are busy with their own children, their own lives, and one might feel left out or isolated. But let it be known that you are there and available and most of all supportive. This will help you understand their needs and comfort your own. And there are some no-brainers. Practice an attitude of gratefulness and smile and laugh and exhibit an aura of peacefulness. Dwell on the positive things of life instead of thinking about those lonely hours at home. And finally, study, study, and study more. I lead a local assisted living Bible study and assisted living home here in Green Valley. And sadly, studying the Bible is the farthest thing from most of their minds. When at their age, they should be drawing closer to Christ. Now, sadly, I say the Bible comes second to bingo. Studying the Bible, learning from the past, but focusing on the future should be their priority, and there is no age limit to that. So let's close our time together this evening with this verse from Isaiah 46:4. It says, and I'm going to read this twice, "Even to your old age, I am He. Even when you turn gray, I will carry you. I have made and I will bear, I will carry and I will save." And let's repeat that. Even to your old age, I am He. Even when you turn gray, I will carry you. I've made and I will bear, I will carry and I will save. Well, faithful listeners, thank you so much again for joining me for this short time this evening. And as always, I consider it a privilege to be able to share these thoughts with you. And once again, I am Charles Logan, your host, wishing you a good rest of the day and the week to follow. Until, Lord willing, we can get together again next Thursday at 6 o'clock for the look into the Holy Book devotional. May God bless each and every one, and I will bid you a good evening. And thank you.